So, how many times have you walked into a meeting, say at a previous corporate job, or it might be a conference, or anywhere where there are slides used as part of speaking, and you walk in and you look up at the screen and you see the stream of bullet points and the many, many words, and you're squinting to try to see it like what? And you think, oh God, no, not another one of these, right? So we don't want to be that person. And I already know you're not going to be that person. Our talks aren't even geared in that way, yet it can still happen, especially when when we have technical information as part of our talks, which you may very well. So, I want to talk about 10 ways to make your slides more awesome. And I'm not going to go over all 10 of them. You have a worksheet that's right here in this module, in this activity. So download that worksheet, print it out, use it like as a checklist, as a guide. Those are best practices for slides. I'm also sharing in this module some awesome resources. One of my favorite teachers in this realm is Gar Reynolds, and he wrote a classic book that pretty much everyone who presents, I think, uses as a reference. And it is called Presentation Zen. And so I'll put a link to that here. Also, Slideology is awesome by Nancy Duarte, both amazing, amazing teachers around slide design. But I'm going to tell you some things that I have learned from them and from experience and from my clients and the many conferences and meetings I've been to. So I'm going to highlight some of the things that are on the list, but really overarching, what I want to say is the whole goal is the goal of your slides, of any one slide and your whole slide deck, when you are present and the presenter, meaning you are the primary source of information. And never forget that. Your slides are your assistant, because you want to be ready even if your technology doesn't work, which has happened to me and most presenters who have presented with any frequency. You still want to be able to deliver the goods. You don't need that slide deck. It is not what tells you what to say next. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have slides that support you in remembering what you're going to say next. That probably has happened for you, and you can certainly allow your slides to help support you. But just what the ideal situation is, you can have your slides not work, and you can still deliver an awesome talk. That said, slides can be an amazing reinforcer of both content, like information, especially when you've got numbers, statistics, complex information, when you've got processes or things that you really help people to understand if they can see them visually or spatially. Awesome use of slides. Just make sure you're choosing the visual representation that best represents whatever you're trying to show. So, use a pie chart if you're going to use a pie chart, which some people sort of, argue about the effectiveness of pie charts, but I have seen them used really effectively. You've got something that's a whole. You're saying there's a certain slice out of the whole, amount of information here that is. So, for example, if we were talking about our brains, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it's something like our brain, 2/3 of a 60-something% of our brain's architecture, whatever, like elements are involved in visual processing. Isn't that amazing? So think about we have our five senses, and then we've got all the ways that our senses integrate to have our experience. And one of our senses has a huge play in the architecture of our brains, more than 50% on one of those five senses. So that is, you might show that on there, a pie chart. It's probably not the best way to show it, but, here is the whole 100% of our brain's usage. This amount is used on, this whole amount is used on visual. Of course, even better might be to actually show a brain, right? Have an image of a brain and show all the places marked off with different color-ins that say all of these parts of the brain are part of the visual experience. Of course, you're only going to do that if the point you're making about the amount of space in our brain that is used for visuals is an important point to support your overall goal of your talk, right? You're not going to spend all that time on it if you don't care whether they remember that piece of information or not. So I'm giving you 2 points here. One of them is choose the right visual for the kind of information you're sharing. And then secondly, Only use a visual if you really want them, if you want to enhance that piece of information. What you're doing with slides when you design them well is you're helping them know what to pay attention to. Just like we do with stories or analogies, description or audience engagement activities, everything we choose that amplifies content is a way of saying to our audience, pay attention, this piece is important and I want to help you remember it. Okay? So that's the overarching way to think about which slides you include. A lot of times people will think, and I'm talking about when you are present. Now, if you're doing a webinar or something, your slide design is going to be very different, and that's not what we're talking about here. You could have no slides for 5 whole minutes or 10 minutes. You might only have 2 slides for your whole talk. The question is, what would help right now for my audience to get it most? And if it's a visual and it belongs on a slide, then put it there, okay? So you don't have to, people often ask me, how many slides is the right amount of slides to have for a 20-minute talk? 0. 0 might be the right amount of slides to have. Your question is, what would help them get it? So you can read all these best practices. Let me see if there's anything that I think would be helpful to just point out. Yes, only 1 point per slide. 1 point per slide. I'd rather see 6 slides that make 6 different points than see bullet points that are not connected to each other all on one slide. Even better, make 1 point on a slide and pair it with a compelling image. Remember, I think I talked about the picture superiority effect that John Medina talks about in his book, Brain Rules. I'll link that in here too. That picture superiority effect says we are far more likely to remember something that is shared auditorially if it is paired with an image, a compelling image. It's like way more likely, 60-something%. I know I just said that about the brain structure too, so we'll have to check my statistics on the brain structure. But make 1 point per slide, and even better, pair it with a compelling image and as few words as possible. 6 words or less if you can on one slide. And then let's see. I talked about a lot of these other things that are on there. Be sure to remove any irrelevant information. A lot of times I'll see a chart, and that chart will have all these different labels for, the year, it'll label each year, it'll label, in increments of 5, let's say. When, if you're going across to, the increments go all the way up to 250, maybe you only need increments of, 25 or something across the bottom. Or, the years, maybe you can use 5 years, depending on how long the year span is. As few labels as possible, and use color to help us know where to look. So if what you really want us to look at, say it's a bar graph, what you really want us to look at is the bar graph in the middle that's like shorter than all the others around it, then make that one green while the other ones are orange or something. You see, so you use color to help us zone in with our eyes. And you'll see great examples. In fact, I'll include some examples of this. There's an excellent data visualization woman. I can't think of her name right now, but I will link to her website where you can see lots of examples of how to create data slides that support your presentations. Okay, so use this handout. I think you're going to find it really handy for the rest of your life, so keep it around. This is how we engage best practices around slide design. Happy to answer any questions. I'll see you in the next video.